right? It's truth-telling time. What is it that you really want? Is it that you want to look rich or you actually want to be rich? Do you want to be wealthy or you just want to look wealthy? See, it sounds like a dumb question on the surface, but when you really get down to the crux of it, it's a lot to unpack there. What is it that you're really wanting to achieve? Do you just want to feel, that you have status, or you want to feel wealthy? You want other people to treat you as such? Or do you actually want to create generational wealth? And the answer to that question, I think, will lead individuals down very different pathways. If we're really talking about generational wealth and doing what needs to be done, then there are different things that may seem counterintuitive when it comes to really the way that we actually live our lives generally through this social media age and what have you. We live where we put everything on the front page, things that are not even really true, or trying to make people think that we have all of this extra money, or make people think we're taking all these extravagant trips that we're funding ourselves, or taking pictures in other people's homes and all this kind of stuff, trying to create this imagery of a life that you've never been able to cultivate for yourself. And what's more important to you? Being able to show off in front of other people, or actually being able to live that life, be comfortable, know that you are financially secure, and not only financially secure, but also financially prosperous. In a position to where you're not really concerned about paycheck to paycheck. You're able to handle a solid blow to the economy or to your personal home and what have you. You're able to actually be financially sound regardless of the situation and what's happening around you. And so that's the question. Do you have an answer? It may be something you have to sit with for a little bit. And I'm telling you, even for myself, sometimes if I'm being honest with myself, sometimes the answer changes. And I have to figure out how to get to a point where that answer never changes and it's unwavering towards actually creating what I say I want to create, which is generational wealth, as opposed to just looking like it. And that's what we have to sit with.
I was a diamond in the rough. They said what we had wasn't enough. They said there was no more room for us. But now we're here about to tear it up. I was a diamond in the rough. They said what we had wasn't enough. They said there was no more room for us. But now we're here about to tear it up.
All right, thank you so much for joining me again. Welcome back to OPM and Beyond, where we talk about, you guessed it, other people's money, how to learn about ourselves and create generational wealth. So what I want to do now is I want to spend a little time just briefly showing you some clips from some people who are already in the financial sphere and kind of their perspective on the real versus fake rich kind of crises, if you will. And from their perspective, what that looks like, right? And how impactful that is and how detrimental that is. So you may have heard of Chris Hogan, who is a financial coach, and you may have seen him kind of on Dave Ramsey. He works with him. Or you may have also heard of MJ Harris, maybe or maybe not. MJ Harris is a financial influencer. So I want to play a little bit of sound from them and kind of how that looks and kind of why it's essential to get away from that.
But in our culture right now, lots of people look rich. They look like they got stuff going on. You can go from what shoes people are wearing to the purses they're carrying to the cars they're driving. Right? And people can look like it, but here's the reality. They might look rich, but they're actually broke.
The most ironic thing on earth that I actually saw once I came into this industry was that the wealthiest people that I come across on a day-to-day basis usually tend to be the people who spend the least amount of money. They're the least flashy. So when I first started out in this industry and someone would come into my office right here, they come right into this office here, and they would come in and they would be, decked out. I'm talking designer clothes, the nice shoes, the jewelry, everything like that. Hair done, just everything's perfect. And I would think to myself, okay, all right, we're about to do something today. I'm thinking this is somebody with some money. And I'm sitting up here across from these people who are just like me. We're all dressed nice. We're looking good, looking fabulous, and broke. Broke. When they show you the receipts and show you the actual, like their documents, their accounts, everything like that, the least amount of money. But then the one who pulls up in your office in a 5-year-old, 10-year-old Subaru, wearing really just like plain clothes, nothing over the top. These are the folks with millions of dollars in assets. Millions. Cash. I'm talking cash.
So we just watched that video, right? Just kind of showing, okay, that there's kind of an issue where, you know, the facade is so important to a lot of individuals that by the time it's actually time to do something, to sit down and strategize and come up with a plan for what to do with your money, how to make it work for you instead of you always working for it, by that point, it's really, really you're in a bad way when it comes to being able to set yourself up for the future, because you spend so much time concerned about the appearance of things and, you know, concerned about how people view you and how things look and how you're able to present yourself to the world. Now, don't get me wrong, presenting yourself in the best light it's important. There's a reason that people spend a lot of time and attention on that, and it has its place. Don't ever let anybody tell you it doesn't. But again, its place. Sometimes when things are out of place, it kind of defeats the whole purpose of what you were doing that for. You position yourself to be able to attract like-minded individuals or individuals that you hope to be like-minded with in order to get to a certain end or gain, or be able to even add or give to other people in a way that meets kind of the same mindset that you have and things that you want to give yourself toward, right? So it's important, but we have to think about this thing in a way that is everything that you're doing getting you towards your ultimate goal? Is having a lot of pictures on vacations that you could barely make it to really the way you want to live? Or don't you want to be able to do that on any given whim, you know, whenever you have the time to do so? It's not a financial issue. You can just do that, as opposed to, you know, you and 12 other friends kind of coming together to rent this huge house that nobody individually can afford to rent. And, you know, you all take turns kind of pretending like it's just your spot, like all these different things. It's a lot of energy, right, that goes into the facade of financial solvency, stability, and excess, right? So what's the real goal? Is the goal to just fool everyone, or is it to actually get to a point where you are good financially? And you're responsible and you are setting yourself up for a great future when it comes to your money and wealth generation. So that's what's really important. So what we want to do now is kind of take a look at, okay, well, what does it look like? How do we know how to model ourselves? What does it look like to be someone who's making the right decisions when it comes to, you know, modeling yourself after a particular model for financial success? If there is any one model, right? There's a lot of different ways to get to one goal. But if we're looking at what's the typical characteristics and mindset of someone who is actually generating wealth and maintaining that, and not just the facade of it. So we want to look at some of those things. We got Chris Hogan, who's going to kind of tell us, you know, just run down some of the individuals from a survey that he did or that they did and gathered information from millionaires and what they deem important, what they spend money on, and kind of some of the things that we spend money on, and juxtapose the two.
Dreams. In our national study of millionaires, we learned that the average millionaire lives a very modest lifestyle. It's not the flashy stuff that you see on TV. It's not this Hollywood type thing. These people are very focused. Some fascinating stats. For example, let me get my readers on here so I can tell you. So, dealing with clothes. The millionaires that we studied, again, we talked to over 10,000 of them across the country. So I'm not talking about 5 to 10, I'm talking 10,000. The millionaires we studied spend an average of $117 a month on clothes. Well, look at this. While the Bureau of Labor Statistics reports the average American household spends $154 a month. 5 most popular cars that millionaires drive. You ready? I'm gonna start from the bottom and go up. All right? Do it. Subaru, Lexus, Ford is number 3. Okay? Number 2, Honda. Number 1, Toyota. Do you see Lambo on there? Okay. Do you see Porsche? Do you see Bentley? Nope. Only 6% of millionaires carry credit card debt. 6%. On average, in our population right now, studies are showing around 40% of our population walks around with credit card debt. So credit cards are not something that millionaires do. That's not a habit. Groceries.
All right, so that's pretty cool, right? To really hear the juxtaposition between what we may believe millionaires to be spending all of their money on and all of their time on and invested in, and what they actually spend money on. Now, I'll be the first to tell you, I didn't individually fact check or go and look up the survey that Chris is referencing. So I'm taking this at face value from what Chris is saying, based upon, you know, their reputation and being on media and kind of their sound advice that I've seen come out of their camp. So, but that being said, definitely do your own research and make sure that you're relying on sound information. But what I will say is, yeah, think about how you would normally think, you know, in your own mind what a millionaire would spend money on. I'm sure you would imagine, you know, them spending extravagant amounts of money on things that are really, you know, luxury items that don't necessarily add a lot of actual value in terms of essentials. But it seems to be that by and large, that's not the case. It seems like by and large, from what Chris is saying, is that they have a very real understanding of cash flow and a very real understanding of how powerful it is to hold on to as much of your money as possible for things that you want to do in the future, purchasing power, wealth, and all of that for really being able to make decisions in the future. So it's really interesting to see a different vantage point, really. That's all it is. It's just a different way of thinking about things, because I'm sure everyone who's watching this video has a different viewpoint as to kind of what was just said. Some people it may be a shocker to say, really, they don't spend on these things, these you know, fancy cars and all of these luxury items, and someone else may say, well, yeah, dummy. You know, so and somebody else may disagree with the information completely. So it's just all about, you know, taking that information in as another perspective and then kind of seeing what that does for you in terms of adding that to your thought process to determine what your focus will be moving forward. I would say that it's probably pretty reliable, because I would imagine that people who really do the work to get to being financially sound and prosperous and create generational wealth, I would think that they have a very keen understanding of how powerful, it is to hold on to as much money of yours as possible. And which is a lot of times done by cash flow. So, and that's the next thing we really want to talk about. How do you kind of mimic this kind of behavior? What do you do as opposed to just speaking in large platitudes of, you know, do better? What do you do in order to really kind of ingratiate yourself in the mindset of what we were just referring to in terms of not spending money on all of these things that kind of suck up all of your income and really don't provide a lot of value on the back end, right? So I would say the next part of this video is going to be very helpful towards that. So let's kind of look at what we can do to kind of get into that mindset and develop the thought process that a millionaire would actually develop and use in order to create generational wealth.
Freedom for ourselves, I really do think it's a matter of reducing your expenses as much as possible. Stop imitating the lifestyles of people who have less financial security than you do. Some of the very people that we are imitating, some of the very people we're trying to impress, they have no financial security. Let me tell you this, I'm not here to tell nobody's business. I'm not giving no names on nobody. But I have sat there in the meetings, I see this. And the very people who you would think show the image of total wealth and total just exceptional financial, gain. These people look like they make a lot of money. They do make a lot of money. They spend the same amount of money. They're broke. They're broke. We got to change our mindset to stop imitating those people if we want to create financial freedom for ourselves. And what is the point of living this fabulous life during your working years and you create no financial foundation for yourself later on? And then when you hit retirement, you have nothing. You go from middle class to lower middle class or middle class to broke. Do you know how many people are facing insolvency? They are going to go broke in retirement because they're so busy being fabulous during their working years. Beyond that.
Okay, so that gets to more of the serious aspect of what the detrimental impact is for following down the fake rich path for too long, right? In addition to kind of giving you that nugget about how to go about changing that mindset. So keeping expenses low is one thing that helps to maximize the difference between your income and expenses, which is that gap in the middle, which would be, your positive cash flow that's constantly building on top of itself. If you spend the same thing that you make, you are at best putting yourself in a position where you can't make any adjustments for anything that may come up that's unforeseen. And even worse than that, you may be using other things like credit and such to supplement your actual income, where you're kind of working yourself backwards into more and more debt as you continue to move forward, which is kind of the opposite of building wealth, right? Walking more and more into debt is actually going to be more of a problem. And he gave you a visualization kind of individuals finding themselves later on in life, not having made the right decisions, and I'll be fair. Some of this is not them, necessarily putting on a facade. Some of this could be due to ignorance. Some of this could be due to, just not really being present and understanding finance. But for a lot of the newer, Facebook, social media, generations and such, a lot of times it really is driven by a need to be seen and not necessarily do the work behind the scenes. And so that can lead in the future to a situation of really not being financially sound moving forward and having to depend on other things, to actually sustain you that are not reliable. And so you are your biggest advocate and best chance to have a sound financial future. And doing things right now that help keep your expenses low and your positive cash flow kind of building on itself over time can only do you service, do you well moving forward, whether you choose to invest some of it, which I hope you do, whether you choose to sit on, liquid cash in case something happens and you can make adjustments. And if you want to go on a trip, you go on a trip. If you want to, buy something cash, you buy something cash, no interest on it, not having to worry about additional fees and how those compound over time, really being in the driver's seat when it comes to your money and what you want to do with it and how it will serve you and you not serving it. And so that's kind of what that's getting toward. And this part of it is really just, I've already kind of said it when it comes to the cash flow and the, and how your money's flowing, and hopefully it's a positive cash flow moving forward and compounding on itself. I just like the way MJ says it, so I'm going to play what he said, and then we'll kind of, continue to parse through that. And also, I think on the tail end of that, I'll let Dave Ramsey come on in there too, to kind of really key in again on some of those key points of not being slave to money and slave to debt, and really being in the driver's seat again, to making the best decisions for your life and not having your financial situation make those decisions for you.
And how I define broke has nothing to do with how much you make. It has to do with how much you keep. If every time you get your checks at the end of the month, you made this much money and you spent that same amount of money, or in some cases, you're spending more than what you made because you're using credit to supplement things, right? Then you are broke. And the people who I saw who were spending the least amount of money were the people who are building wealth, and I figured it out.
The highest data point we find between people who are wealthy and people that aren't is they avoid debt. Of all the different data points you can look at, and we've done all kinds of research, been done separate from us, and we've done a ton of research. And we've seen it for decades. We've been doing this. This data point moves the needle more than anything else. Just simply not having any payments allows you to build wealth. Buying crap that you can't afford with money that you don't have to impress people you don't even really like, you give your whole life away. But it's hard in a culture that is saturated with debt. I mean, we really believe you can't be a student without a student loan, like it's a freaking federal law. You're not allowed to do that. What do you mean you're not allowed to do that? You can't exist without a credit card. Everybody knows that. You can't have a car without a car payment. We all know that. Think about this. You hear these things out there? This reverberates all through the culture. A culture full of debt and a culture full of broke people.
I can't hit this point enough. You have to minimize your expenses if you want to create wealth. You keep your expenses at a nice low level and you keep on making more money, keep on making more money. That's the sweet spot. And if you want to be able to live that way, then you have got to keep your expenses low.
So that's really the crux of it, right? It seems like this really big daunting thing. And the reason it can seem that way is because it is when you don't have the mindset. It's hard. You can't certain things that are become second nature once you have the right mindset. It's really hard to explain when you're not thinking about it in the way that is most conducive to building of generational wealth. So setting that stage is really important, right? And so what we know now is that we have to make a decision, right? We have to decide, do we want to just look like we have money, or do we want to actually have money? And I'm not going to lie to you, there's a way to kind of do both a little bit, as long as you are in the driver's seat and understand what you're using it for, and that you're using it and you're not being used by it. Some people, like I mentioned before, are using that in order to develop platforms for themselves in order to get other business and do things. It's called marketing, right? So, there's a way to use that and not necessarily be used by that. And so that's okay, but always be in the driver's seat of your strategy and understand what your ultimate goal is so that you can get there and know exactly how you want to do so. And then the other thing is to kind of look at, what ways you can go about doing that. And it's just like a really simple concept of doing your best to keep your expenses low. And I would also add to that, try to make your income high. Always be pushing for a higher income and always be trying to find ways to reduce your expenses. And that kind of way, money that's freed up and not tied to debt can actually develop and allow you to generate wealth, over time. And by you generating wealth over time, it's kind of one of those things that as the snowball starts to form, you'll find that it's it compounds, just like how debt compounds and there's interest rates and all those things. Once you start having free money to be able to invest that's not tied up by debt, money to invest in different things, different opportunities, you can really start to see your money work for you and grow in exponential ways as well. And so that's really what this is about. I hope you got something out of it. I definitely did when it comes to asking myself those hard questions. Are you just playing with it? Or do you really want it? How do you know when you've gotten there? How do you know when you've gotten to knowing that, yes, I am trying to do what it takes to build this. I don't care what people say or what people think, or, I don't care how people feel when I say, hey, I can't afford what you're talking about right now because that's not where my money is allocated to, and how you think people will view you in that kind of sense. You have to really be firm in your thought process and thinking, understanding what your goal is. And understand what your goal is, understanding that will help you be a lot more solid and firm in tactical things, day-to-day things, and things that are not part of your long-term plan, because your priorities will let you know what's important. And suddenly hard decisions are not really that hard. And so we're going to be working on that. I'm going to be working on that. You can drop down in the comments, let me know your thoughts about that, how you've been implementing any of that, how you plan to implement any of that, or just general comments that you think kind of add to the general discussion of what we're talking about in terms of mindset in order to try to build generational wealth. All right, thanks for joining us for another episode of OPM and Beyond, where we discuss, you guessed it, other people's money to learn more about ourselves and creating generational wealth. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all of that good stuff, and we'll see you next time.
In the rough, diamond in the rough, in the rough, 'cause it goes back and forth. I know that you feel that pressure, but I don't ever fall. Keep on rising like a diamond in the rough.